Many of you would know that before coming here to Sydney, I was in Darwin for a number of years with our Missionary God's Love mission up there in Darwin. And I was a chaplain to an urban Catholic Aboriginal community, namely St Martin de Porres community. And used to do a lot of travelling. I remember one of my travels going down to Daly River, which is quite a distance away from Darwin, and going to country there and meeting up with Miriam Rose, who was, she's the first Aboriginal Catholic principal in Australia. She was made as the Senior Australian of the Year this year, and actually on the local level in the Northern Territory, she was seen as the Northern Territorian of the Year. So quite a great woman, a great artist, and very witty, very much down to earth, and a tower of strength to the people. So I went to her country and she said, have you been welcomed to country yet? I said, no, I haven't, Miriam. She said, all right, meet me at 4 o'clock down the river. So this was mid-afternoon, and I had gone to the presbytery, and I was on top of the presbytery, the grounds, and looks down to the Daly River. And I was admiring the river, but also admiring the crocodiles passing by. You could see they were like dogs paddling away, one after another, going down the river. Anyway, 4 o'clock comes, so I toddled down to the river to meet Miriam, and she had another woman with her sister. And as she said, okay, come to the water's edge. And I said to Miriam, is this the same river that kind of, that's up near the presbytery? She said, yeah, that's right. This is the Daly River. I said, is this the same, about an hour ago I saw crocodiles passing by, and, are they the same crocodiles? Are there crocodiles in this river? She said, oh, the crocodiles won't hurt you. So we go down to the river, and she said, I want to welcome you to country. And what I'm going to do is get some water from the Daly here and pour it on your head and on your belly button. And, oh, this is quite intimate, I'm thinking to myself. And so she pours it on my head and then down the belly. And she said, this is a sign of the water coming to cleanse you, your life, and you're being welcomed. And then as she did that, she stepped back into the water and she spoke to the water. She said, Father Brian is here, Rivers of Daly, and Father Brian is wanting to cross this area. So we asked the ancestors to look after him and to protect him, so he'll be having safe passage. And he's not doing any harm to our country, but he's come here to bring good news and the good news of Jesus, or words to that effect. By this time, I was absolutely amazed, because all of my Catholic theology started, wrapping around in my head. I began to think, wow, the waters of baptism, of how we are cleansed and washed in baptism. And as Miriam spoke of the ancestors, I thought, wow, that's a communion of saints, our ancestors in the faith who were praying for us. And I must confess, it was a real healing for me, a beautiful healing, being welcomed to country, welcome to the land of the First Nation peoples. So today we are celebrating National Aboriginal Torres Strait Islanders Sunday. And it's a yearly observance, and in fact this week, what we call NAIDOC Week, which means a day of observance, the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Day of Observance. So throughout this week, you can watch NITV, there's a bit of a plug there for you, and you'll see many documentaries highlighting and embracing the Aboriginal culture. And the theme chosen for this Sunday is Heal Country. And if it's anything we're aware of in these days, we know that our country needs healing. But for the Indigenous person, country isn't just like a geographical land or a bit of area. Country embraces all things, values and people and relationships and resources and so many things, and even their ancestral heritage. That embraces country. So when we are welcomed to country, or as we had in the beginning of Mass, acknowledging country, we're recognising all those Indigenous who are part of this land first and foremost, and we who are invited to be on their land and to celebrate their great dignity and great gifting to our land here. So it's a beautiful celebration, and I suppose I didn't really recognise that until I went to Darwin and worked with the Indigenous and seen what a great blessing it was. So to heal country, in Laudato Si, Pope Francis talks about how country needing healing, our world with all its environment needs a healing socially and physically and spiritually. And the Indigenous, our brothers and sisters of Indigenous descent, are very much into the spirituality of the land. They're very connected. I remember back in 2018 going to a conference in Perth. They would hold these 3 yearly conferences it'd be a week of highlighting Aboriginal culture. And one of the women lecturers who was speaking during that week, she spoke about her mother as the sun. I thought, oh, that's interesting. She said, my mother is always with me because when I wake up in the morning in a different country, the sun is always shining. And the sun is like my mother. The sun will always be there to protect me and to look after me and to give me warmth to my body. Same as my mother who protects me and gives warmth to my body. I know I can feel secure in my mother, and just as I feel the warmth in the rays of the sun. See how beautifully connected they are, healing country. Another one, Mira and Moses talk about the Dadiri, which is what we would see in our tradition as contemplation. Dadiri is deep listening. Miriam says, I can go out in bush and I can get in touch with God's spirit through the birds singing. Can you hear the birds singing? Or through the cascade of the waterfall. Perhaps you've got the fountains in your homes or you're near a waterway seeing the fountain. Or she talks about just through touching the earth, God's Spirit is breathing, creating and recreating, healing country. So today, as we celebrate healing country, we have the gospel given to us on the 14th Sunday, and it's quite apt, quite a beautiful gospel. Jesus is coming to his land, to his own native land, if you like, to his own nation, to his own country, Capharnaum, to Nazareth. And we see there that he receives a hostile reception. At first, they're amazed at the words that fall from his lips, aren't they? Yet he begins to turn to them about, Elijah and Elisha in different ways. And all of a sudden they begin to worry and think, well, that's not right. And they begin to reject what he might be saying. And perhaps we could be understanding too of the Indigenous, that for a long time they were not understood. For a long time they received a great hostile reception. And so we have nowadays a sorry days of reconciliation, acknowledging country, welcoming country. All these are means by which we heal country and we accept. And just as Jesus said he could only heal a few people, he could only speak to a few people who were willing, so too the Indigenous have got much to offer, yet I'll be willing to open to them. St. John Paul II said that the church in Australia, or rather the church that Jesus intended to be in Australia, would not be the same until we accept the contribution that the Aborigines make to our church, and that contribution is joyfully accepted. Back in the day in the gospel we hear, Jesus wasn't joyfully accepted, he was rejected. But as we come together as a group of peoples, we can be accepted because we all have the same Father. And we are all united in healing country. We're all united in fighting for country and upholding our waterways and the spirit of our land and the birds and the trees and all that nature shouts and screams to us. So let's unite with the Indigenous in this week in healing country. Let's adhere, let's listen to their voices. I remember one particular experience when we had all these terrible bushfires ravaging through our country, and even here in New South Wales region, great bushfires were happening. And then after that, they began to realise what the Indigenous do, what they've been doing for millennia of time, that they're into backburning. See, this is a beautiful thing that they do up in the bush there in the Northern Territory. They burn bush so as to make it a bit of a clear way for people to walk through, and so that when the rough weather dumps come through, it's already been burnt back, so there's no problem. And now the firefighters of our day are taking up that technique of backburning, which has always been an Indigenous technique. So here we can learn so much from the Indigenous. Let's open our ears. Let's, as Miriam would teach us, to deeply listen to God's Spirit, speaking into our hearts, creating us and recreating us and healing us. And as we are healed and listen to that great Spirit, we can in turn heal others and bring healing to our country. May we have a blessed week ahead of us in this Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander culture, and may we recognise our brothers and sisters of faith, and may we turn to Jesus in faith. Jesus was amazed at their lack of faith. Today, may be amazed at our faith and our oneness and our desire for reconciliation and our desire to love our Indigenous as they love us and embrace us, and we call to each other in this beautiful homeland that we call the Great Southland of the Holy Spirit, Australia.